What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. We inch closer and closer to this year's NFL draft. I'm incredibly excited. I'm sure you are as well. But before we kind of get to the draft, I figured it would at least be somewhat worthwhile to go through Green Bay's losses so far during this free agency and offseason period, because if we don't know what Green Bay lost, it's tough to know exactly what they need to replace and kind of look for in the draft. And I understand that Green Bay is not exactly the team that's looking to go apples to apples here and fill in whatever gaps they lost in free agency and just fill them in with draft picks. That's not how they operate. But overall, I still think as this offseason's progressed, it can be tough to lose track of exactly what Green Bay lost as the course of the offseason went along. So today, I'm sure you know the names, right? I'm not going to be breaking any news here with what names are no longer on Green Bay's roster, but I want to take a deeper look at how many snaps did they play? Did they play special teams? How did they play a season ago? Is there a replacement currently on the roster? So let's just kind of go through those one by one and see what Green Bay is actually missing now that the offseason is mostly over, not including the draft or maybe a couple late free agent pickups. So first and foremost, Corey Linsley, right? 880 snaps a season ago, all-pro center, Pro Football Focus's #1 rated center in all of football, had a plus 15.8 grade, just monster grade from me this past season. Of course, tremendous center, not only as a blocking center in the run game, but as a pass protector for Aaron Rodgers. But so much more important than that, making so many of those checks along the offensive line, pre and post snap, getting everyone on the same page. And I think what can kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit too is all those amazing free plays that Green Bay generates. Yes, Aaron Rodgers' cadence and his hard count and getting everyone set or, catching the defense off guard, that is all incredibly important and probably 90% of the equation. But if your center's not 1,000,000% focused on exactly what's going on, those free plays don't happen and it just ends up in a 5-yard penalty or nothing at all, especially if the defensive lineman or who's ever, offsides gets back behind the line of scrimmage. The fact that Corey Linsley was so incredibly adept at the moment, he almost had like double-sided vision. They could see, because a lot of times he'd be looking the opposite way and he just had an uncanny ability to know exactly when to snap it. But as soon as somebody's across the line, he's snapping it back to Rodgers. And it might sound like something that's very easy to learn, but he had just an innate ability to know exactly when to snap the ball. He was in lockstep with Aaron Rodgers on those plays, and he should get credit for a lot of those free plays that Green Bay was able to generate as well. So now they'll have somebody else running the show at that center position. It'll be important for them to be able to pick that up, and it's a big part of Green Bay's offense and being able to generate some of those explosive plays. So does Green Bay have a replacement on the roster? Yeah, probably. Elton Jenkins and Lucas Patrick both can certainly play center. It'll be really interesting to see what direction Green Bay goes here. Lucas Patrick's got 1 year left on his deal, and then you kind of take a wait and see approach more than likely. They could try to extend him if they think he's a longer term center, but it could very well be that he's a stopgap at center this year, and then they either have to find somebody else or Elton Jenkins takes over. They could also just keep Lucas Patrick at guard for a season and then kind of reevaluate things next year and plug in Elton Jenkins at center and say, you're going to be here for the next decade for both Aaron Rodgers and hopefully Jordan Love. And I think there's a benefit to that as well. I actually think that Jenkins his best position could actually be center. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I definitely think Lucas Patrick would be better at center than he was at guard. So I think that's something that you have to weigh out as well. But they definitely do have players. But again, it saps the overall talent of the interior of the offensive line. Now, in an ideal world, if Jenkins doesn't have to kick out to tackle for Bakhtiari, you probably still have Jenkins, Lucas Patrick, and John Runyon Jr. in some capacity, which is still really good, but you're going from Corey Linsley to John Runyon Jr. So definitely some snaps that are going to have to be figured out, and you're probably losing out on a high-end player like Corey Linsley and filling them in with a replacement level, solid player that maybe won't hurt you, but is certainly not going to help you the way that Corey Linsley did over the course of a full season. Next up, Rick Wagner, 827 snaps, swing offensive tackle, mostly filled in at right tackle and did a very nice job in doing so. Filled in at left tackle, did not do a very good job in doing so of that. They basically nixed that after that Tampa Bay experiment. But when he was at right tackle, had a really solid season, was Pro Football Focus's 23rd rated offensive tackle, had a plus 0.45 grade for me. Just good, solid football from Rick Wagner last season. Nothing spectacular, but most teams don't have starters at tackle the way that Rick Wagner played. For him to be able to come off the bench, be a swing guy that could play whenever they needed him to, and was consistently and constantly ready, that will definitely be a big loss for Green Bay. Providing tremendous depth along the offensive line, and again, starting multiple games and being a more than adequate starter when needed. And right now, they don't have a replacement level player on the roster for that swing tackle position. Yash Nijman is still a complete unknown at this point, and there's a good chance that they're going to have to, figure out this position in the draft. I think a lot of people expect Green Bay to go offensive tackle early within the first 2 days, and maybe they find somebody there that can either be the swing tackle or could potentially start. Maybe you move Billy Turner inside and he ultimately becomes a swing player who can play all along the offensive line with injuries, but this position is very important, especially with David Bakhtiari starting the season injured, coming off a torn ACL. Billy Turner is likely in the last year of his deal based on how they structured it for next season. So this is an important position that Green Bay is going to have to figure out still this offseason. And losing Rick Wagner is definitely a blow to this offensive line. Next up, Jamal Williams, 589 snaps, sub-package running back, do-it-all type of guy, really good in pass protection, did everything else okay. Pro Football Focus's 19th rated running back. They actually had him ahead of A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. I had him with a 5.45 grade, second behind Aaron Jones, but on a per-snap basis, he was actually my third running back last season. Again, his pass protection is what he's really, really good at, solid at everything else. Also had over 100 snaps on special teams last season. That was a little bit surprising to me, but they'll definitely lose some of his special teams ability as well. As far as replacements go, A.J. Dillon steps up immediately as that new number 2 running back, which is, of course, expected. And then Patrick Taylor, Dexter Williams, and probably some rookies, either late, day 3 picks or undrafted free agents will compete for that number 3 running back spot. And really the big thing is going to figure out who can step up and be that major third down running back when it comes to pass protection. Aaron Jones is better at it than people give him credit for. We'll see if A.J. Dillon, he has obviously the size and the strength to hold up at the point of attack. If he can get the mental side of it down, that would be a huge win for Green Bay and allow him to get on the field even more often than he did or is expected to coming up this season. Next up, Tyler Ervin, 191 snaps, 65.9 grade for PFF, plus 1.0 grade for me. Gadget, slot, running back, wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner, number 4 running back as they needed him against San Francisco a season ago. Just a nice football player. And they don't have a replacement on the roster. They don't have that gadget type player. They don't have a kick returner. They don't have a punt returner. So that's definitely going to be something that Green Bay looks to target, likely in the draft. Hopefully somebody that can return some kicks and punts and maybe be that gadget type player on the inside. Lane Taylor, only 68 snaps last season, back-to-back seasons on injured reserve, projected as the starting right guard and looked like he was more than up to the task a season ago before being injured. If nothing else had, given Green Bay more depth along the offensive line, he is gone. And now it's going to be up to Simon Stepaniak, John Runyon Jr., maybe Ben Braden, those type of guys, maybe some rookies to compete for that spot, both as a potential starter, as well as some of those main, active on game day backup offensive linemen that, as last year showed, were incredibly, incredibly important. And then on the last but not least, on the offensive side, of course, Tim Boyle gone. Jordan Love will be expected to pick up that backup quarterback position. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, Christian Kirksey, 633 snaps a season ago, started off as the starting inside linebacker, had some injuries, moved to the more off-ball strong side linebacker next to Chris Barnes, was Pro Football Focus's 61st rated linebacker, had a negative 0.25 grade from me. The team definitely seemed better when Chris Barnes was starting, but Kirksey was better at the end of the season, especially when he found that strong side linebacker role. I thought he was playing pretty good football at the end of the year. Easy to say that Kamal Martin is the expected replacement for him there at that strong side linebacker position. Martin certainly at this point in his career is faster, is stronger, is more physical, is more athletic, but doesn't have the football IQ in any way near, any way, shape, or form anywhere near what Christian Kirksey has. So that's what Martin's going to have to learn this upcoming season. And, you don't really get that unless you have more reps. So this is going to be a big offseason and a big season upcoming for Kamal Martin. Next up is Raven Green, 436 snaps, even with all his injuries last season. Safety, hybrid linebacker. He was the Pro Football Focus's 58th rated safety a season ago. Had a plus 2.1 grade for me. I really liked him when he was out on the field. He was a core special teams player for them. I always thought the defense was better when Raven Green was on the field, allowing him to match up in the passing game with tight ends and running backs. He was strong enough against the run. Just a really good football player. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy for 3 straight seasons. Ended up on the injured list in all 3 years, if memory serves. Vernon Scott, likely a option to take that role. If they attack safety early in the draft, you could also go Adrian Amos moving up in that box safety. And then on special teams, look for Henry Black and Vernon Scott to take some of those snaps as well. Montravius Adams, 201 snaps. Surprisingly, 71 of those were on special teams. Had a 63.1 grade from Pro Football Focus, a plus 0.55 grade from me. Allowed for some depth along the defensive line, just never panned out. And he showed flashes last year more than any other season, but again, was not able to stay healthy, wasn't able to stay out on the field, just was never consistent. And Green Bay will likely look to replace him with rookies, late signed free agents, maybe undrafted guys competing for it, maybe a Willington Prevalon. They're going to have to fill out that defensive line in a variety of different ways. But Montravius Adams no longer there. They still have some depth questions. Snacks Harrison also gone. I didn't add him really on this list just because he was basically a playoff run guy who didn't get that many snaps anyway, but another player that is no longer on the team. Overall, that's almost 4,000 total snaps. So there's this idea, I think, that Green Bay running it back, and they've really got everything back from a season ago. And for the most part, that's true. But definitely the depth along the offensive line with Linsley, Wagner, Lane Taylor, those guys all gone. Not having a returner on the roster, Jamal Williams, their top pass protector, Christian Kirksey and Raven Green both playing quite a few snaps, over 1,000 snaps combined basically in that hybrid, for Raven Green, the hybrid linebacker role, but Christian Kirksey, a straight up linebacker role. And defensive line, we know that they still don't have a ton of depth there. So there's definitely still some holes on this roster that Green Bay is going to have to play with through the remainder of this offseason. They got 10 picks to do that with, and I think they're definitely going to address some of these positions, potentially some more than once, and then they'll have undrafted free agency, and they can always pick up some guys towards the start or end of training camp to fill out their roster as well. Hope you enjoyed this look at what Green Bay has lost so far this offseason and what they still potentially need to replace. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. Make sure to check out today's audio version wherever you get your favorite podcast. We're going to be celebrating episode 1000 on Tuesday. I'm going to be joined by Ben Fennell, as well as ESPN's Matt Bowen. I can tell you right now, we recorded that episode on Thursday. That is an episode you will not want to miss. So if you have not already, go to wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Make sure to subscribe to the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'd appreciate it greatly. People ask me from time to time, Andy, how can I support you, like monetarily or anything like that? I don't have a Patreon. I don't have anything like that. Do me a favor, subscribe here on YouTube, subscribe to our audio podcast, wherever you get those, and then just read Packer Report, and go there as well as one of your main sources for content. So if you do those things, I will be more than grateful, and no need to send me any money via Patreon or anything else. Thanks for your time. Always appreciate it. Until next time, and as always, I can't talk today. And as always, go Pack, go.